Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. We fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep
On this episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, Bennett and Mike are sitting down with Mr. AJ Powell. He is a veteran of both the Navy and the Army, and is now engaged in veteran leadership solutions. He's got a whole crazy, awesome backstory, and we're just going to roll right into it. So, AJ, without further ado, welcome to Cigars and Sea Stories.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So tell us, man, how, Navy and Army, did you do the blue to green program? How the hell did that work?
Well, basically, it was by accident. Kind of like a lot of things happen in my life by accident. It wasn't intended and it wasn't on purpose. So I grew up in the Navy my whole life. My father was in the Navy. My mom was in the Navy. And I spent pretty much my entire childhood on Navy bases in different places. So when I had graduated high school, I kind of figured that it was going to lead that direction. And sure enough, it did. I ended up joining the Navy. I was a DEPR, delayed entry program guy, because I was kind of young at the time. And entered in the year 2000. So that's what I did. I started off, I went into the Navy. I was an AE 7815. And I stayed until 2005 was the end of my first contract. And then I wanted to go back to college full time. So
tell us what that is, though. An AE.
Okay, so an AE is an aircraft electrician, aviation electrician.
Right.
We call them aviation everything, because you pretty much you pretty much spend all of your A school is learning everyone else's job for the first half of it, and then the second half is hey, this is how electricity works. But
this is how electricity works.
Yeah, this is how electricity works. Don't touch it. So it didn't start off that way. So I started off as with going through aircrew and NACCS and rescue swimmer school ARSS down in Pensacola, and then I went through A school, and then I got picked up for the CSAR program for combat rescue, and that was basically trying out, and it was a swift kick in the nuts, is what it was. Yeah. So 7815 is the NEC code that I later earned after a couple of years of hard work, and it's a tactical aviation search and rescue, is what it is. And other other NEC codes for 8201, it's Naval Air Crew Candidate, 8207, which is the Rescue Hawk, the HH-60 Hotel Utility Air Crewman. Then everybody kind of starts off as an 8215, which is an aviation rescue swimmer. So that's what that is. AE is aircraft electrician. 7815 was the NEC code. Just like, in the Marine Corps, you guys have 0311s and stuff.
Right. Well, we have MOSs, and then we have secondary MOSs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's exactly what this is, So I did that all the way up through 2003, went on deployment, stayed till 2004, came back, and I kind of really decided that I wanted to be an officer. I wanted to go commissioned. Little side note, that never happened, but that's what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So end of 2005 rolls around, and my enlistment's coming up, and the recruiter's like, hey, or not the recruiter, the retention. I don't remember what it's called, because this is
retention specialist officer.
Yeah, the
RSO. Yes.
Yeah, that guy. So he's like, you want to stay in the Navy, right? And I'm like, no, I kind of want to go back to college. So I applied to a bunch of schools across the United States, and using my credits that I earned when I went through A school and all the other schools that I went through, I was pretty easy to get picked up, and Wichita State University picked me up. And so I decided I want to go there. So I applied to the Kansas Army National Guard, because I saw that they had a H-60 unit in Topeka, and I wanted to stay flying. So I went to the National Guard in January of 2006 and started school. And 2 years into it, around January 2008, I'm getting a letter in the mail saying, hey, we're recalling you back to active duty. And I was like, no, you're fucking not.
Back to what active duty? Like, you're already in the guard. So were they mobilizing you, or?
No. They recalled me. The Navy was recalling me. They wanted me to go back to the Navy, come back in as a petty officer, and go right back to working in aviation. And I guess they were going to deploy me. That was the intention. Because 2008 was when Iraq was starting to kick off again.
There was a big surge, and yeah.
So I mean, and there were only so many people doing different jobs and stuff. So they sent me this letter saying, "Hey, you're getting recalled to active duty," and I was like, "No, that's not happening at all." So 2 years into the National Guard, I grew really attached to the prevailing culture of the Army, and I decided at that point in my life that I really liked the Army. Culture-wise, more than a Navy. Don't get me wrong. I loved my job in the Navy. I loved being around Navy, Marine Corps guys. I had a bunch of, friends that I made over the years. But I grew attached to the way things were run in the Army. So I walked into the Army recruiting office at Wichita, Kansas, and I showed him this letter. And I gave it to the recruiter. I said, "Hey, I'm getting recalled. It's either this or go to jail, but I'd really like to stay in the Army. Can you help me out?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely. So we can offer you all these jobs." I'm like, "I'm already qualified in my MOS. I've already got all these different secondary schools and stuff. I'm already qualified. Like, you don't need to do anything for me. I just need to go to active duty." He's like, "You're already MOS qualified? Oh shit!" So he grabs the letter and he walks next door to the Navy recruiting office and he slaps it down on the desk and he's like, "Hey, this is our guy now." And he walks out like he was like bawling, He just slaps it down and just walks out. And the Navy guy was like baffled at it.
Drops the mic like a boss. Like,
yeah, dude. He's just like, "Hey, we're taking this guy."
Yeah.
He's just like, "We're taking this guy." And so there's nothing they can do about it. He had the paperwork ready to go. I signed. I went to MEPS again in Kansas City this time. And then within 2 weeks, I was gone. I went to Fort Eustis, and then after that, I got sent off to Germany. And that began my time active duty Army from that point on. So that's how it happened. It wasn't intentional. It was purely by accident.
Yeah. God damn, that's crazy.
Holy hell.
We were chatting about the term sea stories before we actually got on. And did you notice that there was a totally different culture? And I digress a bit here. A sea story is something where a older sailor, an older Marine is sharing wisdom and knowledge, and sure, there might be a tidbit of bullshit, but that's so that you listen to the underlying wisdom that comes out of it.
A lot of bullshit.
Does the Army have that?
So what I discovered is, I spent my whole life up to the point at which I joined the Army, living in the Navy. Hell, my birth certificate says, it's from the United States Navy.
Hell yeah.
And so I thought that's what I wanted my whole life. And then after I moved over to the Army, I realized that, every branch kind of has their own unique culture, and you think you understand it until you're actually in uniform, and then you realize that you really didn't know as much as you thought you did. And so what I discovered is that the Navy kind of has more traditional style culture than any other branch. And I think that the Army has more of the modern day professional leadership style cultures that is, more acceptable to today's standards of operations. I think that that's the unique dividing line between the two. And that's just from my personal experience.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm glad to hear the comparison, because usually when I'm talking to naval personnel, they're docs or they're chaplains. And we have buddies who served in the Navy in a variety of different roles. We got to have Steele on. Our buddy Adam. He was on the aviation side also, doing the RO stuff. But I often wonder in that blue to green side what it's like, especially being... Did you do aviation in the Army also? What was your MOS over there? All the same stuff?
Yeah, well, pretty much. So I was a 15 Tango. I was aviation. I was a Black Hawk crew chief. And I've done every mission and every type of skill set and operation that Army aviation has. So everything from flying ass and trash to POTUS missions to special operations and operations support, teaching and instruction, you name it. I've done, after 1,500 hours in the back of 60s, I've done pretty much every job that the Army has for aviation.
Right. Yeah, man.
Did you ever do any dust off missions?
Yeah, I flew medevac for a number of years.
Nice.
Did dust off, did search and rescue, did combat rescue, did personnel recovery, did CASEVAC.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a special soft spot in my heart for you dust off guys. I actually, to steal a term from Fight Club, I had a single serving friend who
Single serving.
we sure
Was this like a sugar packet friend or like a Q-tip friend?
No, man, we're not talking about the clap. We're talking about a person that you sit down next to at a flight, and you're only going to engage for these 4 hours.
Yeah,
and
man.
No, I hear you. No, it wasn't a sugar packet or a Q-tip. It was interesting because I was kind of like reading my book. She was reading her book, and we started chatting, and lo and behold, she was in charge of dust off. Like in charge of the whole Shazam. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Is that like this past? Well, all right. So Penny and I spent Easter weekend together, in Myrtle Beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
AJ,
good times.
Just to give you a heart.
Yeah.
So the next door neighbor, Michael didn't find this out. I found this out after Michael had left. So the next door neighbor to where we were staying, that owns the house to next to where we were staying, is the first woman to ever serve as the Surgeon General of the Army.
Oh, that's cool.
And she was a freaking lieutenant general, the commanding general of the medical corps in the Army. And I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, man. And you look at her and go, no way.
Right.
But yeah, man. She was a badass chick.
There's a huge fight in the Army that's been going on for quite a while now. And when I became a dust offer, or a boomer in the Army, a lot of the dust off units have affectionately taken the boomer name, which is separate from the Air Force style boomers, the refueler guys. Mm-hmm. But there's this kind of this fight, this argument that's been going on for quite a while. And it's whether or not dust off should belong to aviation or should belong to medical. On the pilot side of it, on the warrant officer, not the warrant officer side, on the commission side of it, all the commission officers that are dust offers were medical corps officers that went to flight school. So they're medical corps according to their MOS.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's
so
interesting.
They're medical.
Yeah.
They're medical corps officers that went through flight school, and then they became pilots, and they track medevac their career. They'll do rotations through the hospitals as their career goes on, but for the most part, that's where they start off in their line days. Your warrant officers, your 153 alphas and deltas and stuff, these guys are just pilots, and they can go anywhere. And then once they get into dust off, kind of the same thing with like 160th, right? Once they get into that field after a while, they can track that permanently, and they get an additional identifier that identifies them with that particular type of skill set. So, for example, medevac. And so they never have to leave. On the enlisted side, the 15 series, your 15 tangos, they are the same thing as the warrant officers. You're a 15 tango, and you can go to any unit. And then if you get put into a medevac unit, you can try to work your way in to stay there. And then, of course, your medics, your ground medics, will spend time in a regular doing their job as a combat medic for a number of years, and then they can try out and get picked up for the flight medic program. And then once they do that and they go through all the schools, and they can get an identifier that can identify them with medevac, and then they never have to leave the medevac community. So there's this argument prevailing throughout the medevac community right now, and it's been going, like I said, it's been going on longer than I was in medevac. Mm-hmm. Whether or not medevac in the Army should belong to the medical corps, or it should belong to aviation corps. And being an aviator, I tend to look at it with a little bit of biasness and say, well, medevac doesn't belong to medical. We're aviation. We fucking fly helicopters. It belongs to aviation corps. You guys are there for the ride, and you guys are absolutely a 100% member of the team, and we can't do the mission without you. But it's an aviation unit. It should be ran like an aviation unit. It should not be ran like a medical unit. and it falls in combat aviation. So, your medevac units are assigned to CABs, your combat aviation brigades. So it's combat aviation. It should be ran like combat aviation. The reality of it is, when you go to a medevac unit in the Army, you find that all of your leadership are medical guys. And so me, coming from an aviation background for 12 straight years, walking into medevac on my 8th year of service, having been in aviation my whole career, walking into medevac for the first time and suddenly being confronted with all these medical service personnel who are the leadership, don't know jack shit about how to do, how to work in aviation, whether, like if it's their first unit, for example. And suddenly you're confronted with this cultural conflict of how to get the job done, where these two sides from completely different backgrounds are fighting against each other and at the same time trying to work together to accomplish the mission. So that's where this argument kind of comes from, like, who should really be in charge? And it's it's a secret that not unless you're in medevac, you really don't know that this exists.
That's fascinating to me.
It's crazy.
It's fascinating to me because I look at it from I call them command conundrums. That's what I call them. I'm like, that's a command conundrum. Because
it is.
Well, because I saw it, like, Marines are holistic in a sense. We work with all other branches, and I get that, but, like, yeah, we're just different. I mean, we travel by other various means, and so we kind of just, like, any time that we bounce around, we go by Air Force means, but then we're calling in Marine units for, Osprey and all of this other stuff. We have no idea, other than 9-line and tactical handoff, we have no idea what's happening behind the veil on dust off.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I just need to make one comment.
Dude, I need it. I fucking need it.
Right.
That's it.
You guys are really fucking good at your jobs. I just need to say that. Like, you save lives. Golden hour matters. And I can say from mechanism of injury until operating room table, we had wounded in 41 minutes. Mechanism of injury to they are fucking pulling shrapnel out of a guy in 41 minutes is insane. Being out in the middle of Kajaki.
Yeah, that's a success story right there. Let me tell you. So, like, I've worked Navy, and Army, and I've had the opportunity in my career, because I've worked across the broad spectrum of all aviation operations in the military. I had a very unique career track myself. So I've had a unique opportunity to work across the entire spectrum of military operations for aviation. And so I've seen how Navy SAR and how Air Force Pararescue and Army Medevac and personnel recovery, how they all kind of work. They kind of do things a little bit differently between each other, but the idea is that there's this overarching umbrella and this understanding about how things need to be done in order to save lives, and whether or not what you're going to allow your personal command conundrums to dictate the mission's going to happen come hell or high water. And so it's a source of pride knowing that you're going to go into a hot area and grab somebody and bring them back come hell or high water to accomplish the mission and save a life. And that's really what means the most.
Yeah. Well, and I gotta say, I mean, maybe because I'm a guy who believes in, like, if you're the person working a helicopter, flying a helicopter, you're a specialist in that airframe and so on. It's very interesting to me that they go through medical corps and then they wind up going through flight school. Because one of the most impressive things I've ever seen is dust off to Apache in support, circle, and now they're just on the deck. Just that bird is down. And then here you go. Guy in a pull-less litter, freaking tea time and date. Here's his kill card.
Yeah, man.
Deuces. And
deuces.
What I always told you guys was save my friends. And then you went and did that. So thank you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I fucking, yes.
It's a crazy thing too, because people I've heard, this is actually a really positive note, like what you're saying and everything. Cause, I've heard lots of people come at it with a different perspective. There's this huge thing about, combat multipliers, force multipliers in the military, versus, everyone else, right? Pogues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people will be like, oh, your aviation, you need to shoot and everything. I'm like, you don't realize,
Fuck
we
that.
get everything you can think of in the back of an aircraft,
Hell yeah, man.
And then, of course, you can fire out the side of the damn thing, too. So, combat aviation and medevac and everybody that kind of works in aviation is a force multiplier to the ground guys at the same time. We all serve, like you said, 10, 20 minutes ago, just in different roles and different aspects. But just because, we weren't there when the IED hit or some guy got around through the shoulder doesn't mean that we're not going to see the brunt of that in the back of the aircraft while working on him, getting him to a cache.
Right.
Hey, so AJ, all right. So all service aside, awesome stuff. Talk to me about veteran leadership solutions. And then, and I don't mean to, but we also want to talk about the Warfighter Journal.
Really? Okay.
Okay. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was getting out of the Army, I was being forcefully retired, kicking and screaming like a little girl, because I'd gotten a number of injuries that put me into the medical evaluation board, the MEB, and I was being medically retired, and I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay in, but it was just something. It was a reality that I had to come to terms with. And so I didn't know what to do with myself. And one of the things I decided to do was start a company. I was working with a bunch of people and everything. And I was going back to school for a second time. And I was getting a degree in sociology with an emphasis in organizational leadership. And so I ended up helping a few nonprofit organizations with their C-suite processes in order to help them basically work together better and identify issues and problems to help improve their leadership processes at that level, if you will, in the organization. And so I produced a product with them after working with them, and produced a product with them that helped them out. And then later on, they came at me and said, hey, this really helped. And then before long, I got a message over LinkedIn from another person with another organization and said, hey, we heard great things about you from these people. Could you help us out? And it's became a developing trend, kind of not back to back, but just, one month here and then another month down the road and then another month down the road. And I first thought that went through my head was like I was telling you that things happen in my life by accident. First thought went through my head was I'm going to get in trouble if I'm charging these people money to do this kind of work. So I got on to the IRS website and looked up small businesses and started a company. And that was,
you gotta love that.
Yeah, right. So I registered Veteran Leadership Solutions so that I could pay my taxes without getting in trouble. And that's basically how it started. That's what it is. And so what I do with it is I provide individuals and organizations customized professional leadership consulting services. And I do it through research-based methodology, subject matter expertise, critical evaluation, and inductive analysis, in order to teach, coach, mentor, and guide those individuals or the organizations towards success and whatever it is that they're seeking to do. Individual service-wise, I provide, customized individual leadership development. I provide immediate, individualized consultation, and I provide leadership coaching. For organizations, though, it's a little more involved. A lot of times, I end up doing organizational leadership development programs, so developing programs, implementation, and standardization of a leadership development program for the organization. I do assessments, I do consultations, I do coaching, mentorship, and advising for the organization as a whole. I do process analysis, research analysis and recommendations, and value-adding proposition assessments for organizations. So that's the brunt of what Veteran Leadership Solutions does.
Wow, that's fantastic. Oh, that's excellent.
For sure.
Well, and that correlates a lot with, a lot of people ask all the time. They're like, hey, how do you guys do this? And what 9 times out of 10, what they're asking is, can we get some of that secret sauce? For us, it's Marine Corps boot camp or something like that. Like, tell us the 14 leadership traits, and all of these other different things. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And that can help out as far as the good order and discipline that you need to have within a unit and teamwork, blah, blah, blah. The way that I approach this, though, is we have methodologies and systems and different things as far as SOPs that are in place for a reason. We uphold standards per the given man so that we can plug them in where it needs to be, so that we can play that entire management system out. And I view that from a patrol leader perspective, but more often than not, it's like, yeah, can you just, we need some motivation. And it's like, how about we talk about how we actually get way more shit done on a global operation scale without being told what to do all the time? How about that?
Yeah.
Do you need self-discipline to do that? Well, yeah, I guess. But I mean, it helps to have tools and shit and then implement them. So that helps also.
So you're right. You're absolutely right. So a lot of people are kind of looking for the quick fixes. And I think this is a reason why you find so many websites and companies kind of put out across social media. You see these posts all the time, like the 10 secrets to leadership success and, the 7 secrets your boss isn't telling you and all this other, garbage out there. The short of it is that, plain and simple, there is no such thing as a freaking secret to leadership or leadership development. That doesn't exist. There's no shortcuts. There's no quick paths to, success down the road. And really what leadership development is personal development. And that's the great thing about veterans is, as a veteran, maybe a lot of veterans don't kind of understand this. And I think this is something that I'm encountering more and more these days, is that a lot of veterans don't seem to understand that from day one, the second you're putting on the uniform, you are learning leadership as a process. You're learning it as a tool. From the very first day you put on the uniform, you're learning leadership from day one. Right. And if you're not using that, then there's something seriously wrong with you. But it is something that sets all veterans apart, if you will, and I would say light years ahead of the vast majority of civilians, including, and I would say especially, civilians that choose, right out of high school, go right to college. Your 22 to 24-year-old civilians coming fresh out of college, I would say the vast majority of them still haven't learned leadership, still haven't learned how to effectively function in society. They're still children living off their parents' paycheck that have jack shit knowledge about the world. Whereas your average 18 to 19-year-old service member who has already gotten a year to 2 years in the military has learned leadership daily in ways that civilian, that 24-year-old college grad, has never experienced in his life.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So put that information, that multifaceted information, to work and to use. I think that it's a process. It's a developmental process. A lot of people, what you were talking about earlier, is that a lot of people are looking for some set in stone type of magic information to help them instantly make, that if they apply that one thing that number of things that you give to them, that they'll instantly be a success. It doesn't work that way. Leadership development is a never-ending, continuous, lifelong developmental process, and it's personal development is what it is. So it's more intrinsic than people realize. If you're waking up every day and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're finding just one fault, one flaw, one needs improvement, one AAR from the day before, and you choose to work on it, that internalized motivation you develop to work on those things, you're practicing leadership right there, because you're leading by example. You don't need people to lead to be a leader.
Right. Well, and that's competing with yesterday you. That's always the competition. Am I better than yesterday? Am I better than yesterday? Am I growing? Am I growing? One of the things that I always ask guys is, what's your highest billet? What's your highest ability to train? Because it's not branch dependent, and it's not it's not MOS specific. I know that, but it's also not rank specific. So
no, absolutely not.
So just like case in point with you, I have no idea what your highest rank is, but I could ask what your highest billet was, and I could ask all of your additional instructor certifications, because, it's one thing to be able to go through schools, right? That's awesome that you can go through schools. Can you be an instructor for those schools? Because, frankly, it needs a Marine Corps, because that's where mine always goes. It matters more that you're an instructor of the school now that you left the school, right? It's just kind of like a force multiplier onto that. Right. You can create multiple versions of yourself. And so that's something that we just totally walk away from. and I see it time and time again. It's not even so much, like, I honestly don't care how many times a guy or gal makes E4 in a 4-year enlistment. I don't care. Or a 5-year enlistment or whatever. I don't care if you left with bad paperwork. I care what your highest billet and your highest ability to train is. Because that kind of gives us at least a foundation to springboard off of, right? And then there's a whole plethora of other questions that come out of that. But that, truthfully, to employers, those are the two biggest questions. What's your highest billet and your highest ability to train? How many people have you been in charge of at any given moment? And how many people can you, per certification, actually go out and train? And in how many different disciplines can you train them in? Now you know how much value you can actually bring to the fight. At least that's the way that I look at it.
You know, I would agree with that. Absolutely, I'd agree with that. That a lot of people don't seem to realize, and especially in the civilian sector, a lot of people don't realize that your rank is meaningless. You know, they associate rank with, if you're enlisted, they think you're a broom pusher, and if you're an officer, they automatically assume that you're a leader if you're an officer. And that's absolutely wrong. And the reality of it is that your NCOs and warrant officers are basically the shit show runners. They run pretty much everything. And your commissioned officers up to a certain point will be a part of that. And then beyond that, they become more strategic level. So what I try to tell people is that both sides of the fence are capable of bringing leadership value to your organization, right? Mm-hmm. Just because, you know, the description, if you will, the operational description of a commissioned officer is to be the developmenter of policy. And the operational description of the NCO is to turn policy into reality. It doesn't subtract the ability of that NCO to bring forth the leadership value to your organization to the same level and degree that commissioned officer would. They both have the same type of qualifications, just from a slightly different perspective. So I agree with you absolutely that, you know, billeting and the ability to apply leadership, teaching, guiding, coaching, mentoring, instruction to an organization is what is most prominently effective on your resume. So you just need to figure out a way to communicate that.
Right. There you go.
So, AJ, let's the last thing. So we've got veteran. So we've got that. Now let's talk about the Warfighter Journal. If you've got a minute to do it, because this is something that I think is really, I think it's really key. Considering the caliber of the writing that's going on there, and I just think that it should take off, frankly.
Well, I want to be upfront and honest with you. I have been working on the Warfighter Journal for over 2.5 years, and it still hasn't taken off. So it's an uphill battle, and I recognize that. It is a what was that famous? It's a hamburger hill.
Right, hamburger hill. Right.
So the Warfighter Journal is a modern day journal, if you will. It's an academic style journal for today's warfighters. Okay. It is a primary and secondary source of well-researched, fact-checked, peer-reviewed, and fully referenced information that basically provides real-world analysis to anyone who's a subscriber to the journal from a warfighter perspective. So it is a little bit conservative, but we do what's called towing the line, which means we check that conservative bias by looking for other sources that contradict the points or opinions being made, which is basically critical thinking in a nutshell. So the Warfighter Journal brings people basically reputable primary and secondary sources in order to educate and inform, drive critical thinking, and guide personal and professional development. Those primary three things are what we do in a nutshell at the Warfighter Journal.
Wow. Awesome. Right on. No, that's solid, man. I'm checking out the website right now. I mean, this is something where it's like, we love being informed and going along with this hero's journey along with you. And I love being able to, along with the audience, check out all of these things retroactively. I mean, that's one of the things that I love about this show. And we were talking about this before we were on with you. Bennett and you have engaged. You've engaged before awesome. He's checked you out, all of this other stuff. I haven't, on purpose, because I knew that I was going to learn along with our audience members. And so I just, I got to mention that little nugget there is that's what I love about our show premise is that
It's
more
because
often
we
than
do
not.
business. That's why we do business the way we do it.
Right. Right.
That's good though.
Well, and it reminds me, okay, here's what it's like. And this is why I think this is how we slipped into it on accident is it was like, hey, bro, I'm going to bring my buddy over to this party. Okay, cool. And then you introduce your buddy on the show, and now you have veterans that are engaging. AJ, I had no idea what the fuck you were up to prior to us engaging tonight, and I cannot wait for the follow-on phone call conversations and digging through the Warfighter Journal and all of these other different folks that I would love to work with you with, and as far as like connections and all of these other different things. So you are adding serious amounts of value to the world, my man.
I love that, Mike. I honestly do, because to me, that's like you have zero clue about anything about what I'm involved with, and you telling me that you don't have a fucking clue, and then you get on it and you're getting it. What to me that says? That's a blind review process right there. Well, it is a blind review. You have no clue walking into the shitstorm, and then you're able to stop and assess it and make your own opinion on the spot. That to me, I love that.
And that's part of the reason that we do the show the way that we do is literally, I can't tell you how many times, well, shit, probably half the interviews that we do, one or both of us are walking in blind. So I would say, well, it's usually one of us, whether Mike brings the person to the table or I bring, because you and I, AJ, have talked extensively for, a few weeks now. And I've been on veteran chatter with you and yada yada yada, the whole thing, but I haven't talked to Mike about it at all, and that's purposeful, and that's the way that it is, and it just helps our whole community kind of expand a little bit, because then Mike looks at this and it's exciting to him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So
see, and we wanted to share a little bit of the behind the scenes as far as for Cigars and Sea Stories listeners. We've had a lot of great people who have been reaching out to us, and we freaking love it. Keep it going. Reach out, your messages, all sorts of stuff. It's great. Anytime that we have the ability to engage, collaborate, work together, all sorts of stuff, and of course, share Sea Stories, because bullshitting's part of it.
Right. So Sea Stories. I got one. I know. So at the beginning of the show, actually before this, Bennett was like, "You got to have a story. You got to have something.
Right.
You got to have something." And so I told Bennett, I was like, "I got a story for you." I don't really tell this one that often because it's not really a moment of pride, but it kind of is a moment of pride at the same time. So if you want to hear it, I'll tell you.
Absolutely.
I do. We want to hear it, of course.
All right. So this basically, I equate this to being my best, worst first impression I've ever had in my life. And this is absolutely horrible. So this is after I moved over to the Army. It's not a sea story, but it is a sea story.
Right.
So after I moved over to the Army, I like a week notice, I get told that we're going to go on a contingency operation to Far Eastern Europe. And so I pack up everything and we head off to this little isolated part of, Ramstein Air Force Base. I was in Germany at the time. And the first set of flight crews, we were divided into two flight crews. The first set of flight crews already took our aircraft to forward deploy them and made a multi-day, several long day flight all the way out to where we were going to go. And the rest of us who were going to fly back at the return journey, we're going to fly out there on a C-130, basically. And so we went over to Ramstein for 24 hours and went to this little isolated section of the base so that we could wait for the 130 to come and pick us up. And before I left, I put this bottle of, like a retard, I put this bottle of detergent in my bag, and not my sea bag, my duffel bag, right? And when it got there, it broke open. And so all of the detergent went all over all my clothes and everything. So everybody else got to get to this little tiny hangar and they got to sleep and get some rest. I spent the entire flipping night doing all my laundry washing all my clothes and packing everything back into a sea bag. By the time the C-130 arrived, I was already awake for a couple of days at this point. By the time it already arrived, I didn't have time to do anything. I had to throw my shit onto the pallet, load up the pallet, and get on the aircraft. I was the first person on the aircraft. So that means I had to walk up to the far right side of the cargo bay, sit down. And I don't know if you guys ever been on a C-130 before when it's got the seat racks in it. Okay, so in the seat racks, like everybody's legs are in between everybody else's legs, and it forms like this this zipper pattern.
Right, yeah.
So I'm the first motherfucker on this plane, which means I'm all the way in the very forward far seat on the right-hand side. And everybody else gets in, and all of our legs are in between each other. And it was like, buckle up, thanks for boarding, load the pallets, and take the fuck off. And you had no time to do anything. I didn't even think about this. Like, we were 20,000 feet in the air an hour later, and I had to pee so fucking bad.
Yes. I've been there. I know what you're feeling, man. Yeah.
I did not want to get up. I didn't want to get up because I've been on a C-130 plenty of fucking times, and I know what peeing on one is like. And there's like 70 people on this plane. So I don't want to get up. But needless to say, like, everyone's asleep by this time. People are screaming to talk to each other because it's really loud. You got earplugs in and everything. But finally, everybody passes out. And I'm like, I got to go. I cannot, hold this anymore. So I get up. And I'm trying to get across everybody. I'm moving all of their legs and everything, trying to step in between everybody's freaking legs to get out of this row. And, of course, that wakes everybody up. And then I get to the back, and I go across where the pallets are at on the ramp back there. And I go on the other side, on the left side of the fucking plane to the tube. It's affectionately known as the tube.
Right, yeah.
And all the tube is nothing more than a plastic oil funnel that's duct taped to a metal tube that runs down the side of the wall of the inside of the bay of the plane and down into the floor and then out of the aircraft. So you can piss into this tube and it goes out the back of the plane, right?
Right. And
next to it is this very slender, 6 inches long privacy screen on a set of hinges that you swing out from the wall. It doesn't hide much except maybe your private parts after you lean forward at the hips to try and stick into it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I pull the damn thing out and I unzip my flight suit. I pull the bottom zipper up and I try to lean into this thing and go pee. And to my amazement, I can't fucking go. I'm in so much pain and I'm trying to push and I'm pushing and pushing and pushing and I can't go. It wasn't stage fright. It was the altitude. For the life of me, I couldn't get anything come out of it. Everything in your body's all swollen up and everything. Nothing would come out. And I'm standing there, my face has got to be beat red from physically pushing to go pee. And suddenly I noticed something out the side of the corner of my eye. And I look over my right-hand shoulder and I became so embarrassed because I saw every fucking person on that plane was watching me. I mean, there were people making motions, cheering me on. You can't hear them because it's loud, but people are they got their hands in the air, everybody's cheering me on, trying to go pee. I became the flight's halftime show. So I'm the halftime show of the flight. There are whistles and shit from the crowd. So I couldn't go now.
God.
So I pull my dick back inside, I zip myself up, and I do the walk of shame back over the row of people, between people's legs, back to my seat, embarrassed as fuck, right? And get some jests from the guys and shit, some elbows and stuff. And there I am sitting there in the seat about ready to explode because I still haven't gone to the bathroom. So a couple hours later, the aircraft lands in this little third world airstrip, and it came to a stop. And the doors opened and the rear hatch lowered, and the local national military police guys, custom guys from this, country come walking into the airplane to check our passports and get our documentation and ship. You know what that's like, right? I wasn't concerned with this. Yeah, all the dumb shit. So I wasn't concerned with any of this crap at all. I was sweating bullets and falling apart at the seams because my bladder was going to explode, and I thought I was just going to wet myself in front of everybody like a fucking toddler. So I look out the, the small little. I look out the back of the aircraft, and I see this tiny little, terminal, this airfield terminal out the back of the ramp. I shout to my boss, "I'll be right back." And he looks at me and he looks out the back and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And he gives me this nod okay, man, no problem. Just come back when you're done. So I make a madman's dash out the back of the plane, across like 300 fucking meters of flight line into the building, through the metal. I ran right through the metal detectors, which sends these things into a fit of lights and sirens in the process because of all the metal I had on me.
Right.
Past security personnel and into the nearest men's room I could find. Right behind me were the military police, the local police, the airport security, all of them hot on my heels the entire time, thinking I was some kind of criminal as they were trying to chase after me. I didn't even notice that they were chasing after me because I was blind to them. I just had tunnel vision. So,
dude, you had to fucking pee.
Dude, I had to go, man. So I bust in the door, I unzip, and I start the strongest stream of piss I've had in my life. Like I was going to piss a hole through the back of that urinal. And then the bathroom door slams open. Everybody comes pouring into the bathroom all at once, screaming and shouting with guns in the air, one, pointed right at my head. Some guy slams me, grabs me and slams me into the wall and then spins me around. I didn't give a shit. Like my glorious stream of piss went flying right across his boots and everything, right? There was a moment of hard silence. Everybody left the room. And I was left to finish peeing in blissful solitude, right? So after I get done, like I walk out, everybody's standing there. Like I get yelled at with a slight laugh and a slight grin from my bosses because they understood the circumstances and stuff, and it was really for show. They were yelling at me and stuff like that, but they really weren't yelling at me.
Right.
And I thought that would be the end of it. Amazingly, this would be only the first of 2 times that I almost went to military prison in this third world country. Because the very next fucking day, they had MiG-29s out on the flight line. And there I was with 4 of my dudes, my flight team partners, climbing on top of this MiG-29. And a TMP, this van, comes whipping around the corner. And the first sergeant jumps out and he's like, everybody quick, get in. And we jump off this aircraft and climb in. And there comes a military police vehicle whipping around the fucking corner. And they wanted to arrest us for spying.
Get the fuck out of here.
No, I'm dead serious.
Jesus.
So we all got taken to the base commander's office and he starts screaming and shit. And it's like, first the guy that had to piss that ran past everybody, and then you're climbing on my aircraft. I'm like, bro, those aircraft are flying like 1980. The plans are on the internet. They're not that secret.
Right. I could build one of those motherfuckers in a cornfield.
Exactly. So that was so after that, despite all the threats and everything, I chalked it up to like the best, worst first impression I ever made in my life. The rest of the time we were there, throughout the entire area, there were rumors that spread throughout the whole flipping base about some American soldier who hauled ass out the back of a cargo plane across the flight line, holding his crotch, trailed by every cop in sight just to take a piss.
That is fantastic. Hell yes. Congratulate Golf Clap. That's superb. Man, I would have loved to have seen that. Oh, yes. I feel that pressure. Like, I don't even have to pee right now, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. Oh my God, yeah. Dude. Well, there you go. There you go, folks. That's why I listen to Cigars and Sea Stories. So subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Time now. Hey, just in wrapping things up, we're past our mark here. Do you have any takeaway links or anything that you want our audience to quickly check out?
Absolutely. Like I'm currently in the process of writing a book right now. And in order to complete this book, I need everyone's participation. I want people to be fellow authors of this book. So right now, if people are willing and able to go to facebook.com/ArmyVeteranAJ, or they can just type in @ArmyVeteranAJ. There's a video on there called leadership, or called Lessons Learned. And that's going to be the name of the book, is Lessons Learned. And I'm encouraging people, if they have a no shit moment, a no shit there I was, come to Jesus type moment, something that happened during their time in service that taught them a leadership lesson. I'm encouraging people to write it down in a Microsoft Word document and then simply send it to me in a message. And I want to work with them hand in hand to develop their story so that it can become a part of this book. So that when it gets published, their story will be published in the book.
Very cool. Very cool. I love the mission. Give them the link one more time.
It's facebook.com/ArmyVeteranAJ.
Nice. Adding value to the world. Well, kick ass. AJ Powell, you are a fantastic individual, and I look forward to future conversations with you, bro.
Thank you, Bennett. Thank you, Mike, for having me on, man. It was a pleasure.
Anytime, bro.
Hell yeah. And a huge thank you to our sponsors, Heroes Media Group, Veteran Focus Podcast Network, Spartan Media for making a kick-ass website, veteranslist.us. If you want a featured membership, you can get half off by entering discount code Cigars and C. Again, that's 50% off. Entering discount code Cigars and C on veteranslist.us. Folks, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Cigars and Sea Stories. We really do appreciate your shares, your 5-star reviews. We appreciate you engaging with us. Hit us up on social media everywhere at Cigars and Sea. We're especially on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good trash. Go ahead, get in touch with us.
All that good trash.
And on that note, we cue the music.
Setting sun.